He was unable to bring me joy, so I turned to another. I dedicated 6 years to my husband, nurturing him, tending to his needs, until that fateful night when he looked at me and said, "I want you to find someone." I assumed he was just kidding around. He was not. Life transformed in a heartbeat. One moment, Nick was strong, capable, the man I had built a life with. In that moment, he found himself ensnared within his own form, a captive of destiny. A stroke, they informed us, abrupt and shattering. He was still able to speak, eat, and breathe, actions that should have brought some sense of relief, and yet they were not, for he could no longer move. Neither his legs nor his arms, and so, 6 years ago, I became his everything. People anticipated that I would send him away. They murmured about locations dedicated to nurturing, where skilled hands could perform tasks I had yet to encounter. Even Nick begged me. "This isn't something you should have to endure," he had once said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "that you shouldn't have to sacrifice everything for me." But how could I? How could I leave behind the man who had been my entire universe? Therefore, I chose not to. I discovered the art of lifting his body from the bed each morning, mastering the delicate tasks of washing him, feeding him, and anticipating his every need before he could even voice them. I adhered to every instruction provided by his doctor, Dr. Dawson. I left my job and created a new life online, working from home so I could be present for him whenever he needed me. Initially, it was intolerable, the burden of it. The fatigue that permeated my very bones. The yearning for something, anything, beyond mere obligation and selflessness. However, as time passed, I adapted. Our days settled into a cadence, familiar and secure. At some point, I ceased to reflect on myself, my body, and my own needs, and then, everything transformed. The hour was late, and a tranquil stillness enveloped the home. I had just completed assisting Nick with his typical evening routine, settling him comfortably in bed so we could share a conversation before sleep enveloped him. These quiet moments had transformed into my refuge, a gentle reminder that the man I had cherished remained beneath all that we had endured. Then he uttered it. "I need you to locate someone." The words lingered in the air, dense and weighty. For a brief instant, clarity eluded me. "I've mentioned this before," I replied, already shaking my head. "I do not wish to proceed." "I'm not discussing the idea of you leaving me," he cut in, his tone more resolute than it had been in years. "I can't provide you with everything anymore, but that doesn't imply you shouldn't have it." I gazed at him, my breath momentarily halting in my throat. I wanted to express to him that he was mistaken, that I had discovered how to be content on my own, that I had long ago ceased to long for anything beyond that. And yet, the way he gazed at me, the conviction in his voice, it stirred something deep within me. Then his voice lowered, imbued with an indescribable quality. "I want to know that you're happy," he said, pausing for a moment. Then, with greater intention, "I wish to witness it." A chill coursed through me, a shadowy, unvoiced feeling coiling in the depths of my gut. He had contemplated this, not merely once or in a fleeting moment, but enough times that he had mustered the courage to voice it at last. I ought to have been appalled. Instead, I sensed a change, an ember long concealed beneath the burden of years, a neglected murmur of warmth, igniting once more beneath the remnants of monotony. That night, I lay awake, gazing at the ceiling, my heartbeat a soft rhythm against the silence of the house. I ought to have disregarded his words. I ought to have feigned that the conversation had never taken place, yet I chose not to. Instead, I allowed the thought to linger, and for the first time in years, I found myself pondering what it would feel like to be truly seen once more. The night unfurled, vast and infinite, shadows cascading over the walls like dark ink. The heaviness of his words resting against my skin, delving deep, curling within the crevices of my ribs. I remained still next to him, gazing at the ceiling, my breath light and measured. He was serious. Every part of me yearned to object, to reject it, to persuade myself that I had misinterpreted, yet the assurance in his voice remained, resonating in the stillness of the room. "A gentleman. Here, alongside us." The thought sent a jolt through me, a tightness in my stomach that mingled anticipation with a hint of fear, creating a complex knot of emotions. This was beyond comprehension, unfathomable, but then he uttered his name, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. I faced him, my lips parting, yet no sound escaped. The name lingered between us. Weighty and foreign in this setting. It was illogical. He was quite youthful, polished, and courteous. However, Nick expressed himself with strong belief. I noticed the way he gazed at you, he murmured. His voice barely above a whisper. I attempted to remember, to extract moments from my mind, to uncover proof that simply didn't exist. Yet, I had never observed, did I? The physician was indeed compassionate, observant, considerate in manners that transcended mere professional obligation, warmth in a cup on chilly mornings, delicate pastries encased in pristine white paper. A serene figure that consistently appeared to provide more than mere medical comfort. No, that was compassion, respectful consideration. Nothing else. Yet uncertainty had already settled in, digging deep beneath my skin. In 2 days, he will arrive. The thought of encountering him once more now carried a different weight, tinged with an unnameable feeling. I had never considered him in this light before, yet, at this moment, I found myself unable to halt. What did I overlook? Were there instances, brief looks, prolonged pauses, that I had dismissed? Had I been so absorbed in the struggle for survival that I overlooked what lay right before me? The prospect disturbed me. Nick's voice became gentle, inviting, urging you to focus. As though it were straightforward, as though it were something within my grasp. The sheets caressed my skin with a cool touch as I turned away, shutting my eyes, urging myself into slumber. Yet my mind would not settle, murmuring fresh ideas, vivid pictures. A touch that lingered, a gaze that hesitated before breaking away. The manner in which his hands, perpetually cautious and meticulously measured, glided with a calmness that felt nearly sacred. Had I envisioned it, I breathed out gently, urging my body to unwind, to release its tension. Yet, in the stillness of the night, my heartbeat resonated with an uncontainable vigor. I wasn't prepared for this, and yet, a part of me, one I had buried long ago, was already awake. The morning air felt invigorating, a serene calm enveloping the house as I navigated through my daily rituals. Still, there was an unmistakable sense of change in the air. My hands shook as I reached for the coffee cups, my pulse. The anticipation surged at the thought of his arrival. This time, it's not due to Nick. Not due to the care, the routine, the obligation. However, due to another factor. It was an emotion I had long denied myself. I reassured myself it was trivial, that I was just conjuring up illusions. However, upon his arrival, I realized I was observing him in a manner I had never experienced previously. The way he positioned himself a tad too near, while leaning over the bed, arranging pillows and monitoring vitals. The manner in which his voice softened as he addressed me, his gaze held a moment too long. And then there were the small details. How he consistently discovered an excuse to linger and converse. Even after completing his tasks, how his hand would linger against the counter, mere inches from mine, as we stood in the kitchen, how his gaze would dance over me, enigmatic, contained. I had never observed that previously. Had he always been like this? Or was it just now that I was truly perceiving it? The words lingered weightily on my tongue throughout the morning. My nerves tightened with each passing moment. It seemed unthinkable to make this request, and yet, I did. Would you be interested in meeting me outside my house or at the hospital sometime? A moment suspended in silence. Then he smiled. It turned out to be simpler than I had anticipated. The atmosphere seemed to lift as he departed. Yet, a certain unease lingered within me. It was more than just the excitement, the nerves, the subtle thrill of a new beginning. It was the burden of it all, the awareness that I had made a choice I could never take back. By Saturday, my hands were steady once more. My heart was no longer pounding with dread, yet with a touch that is more inviting, more profound. I stood before the mirror, gently adjusting the fabric of my dress over my hips, the vibrant hue revitalizing my complexion. The sound of heels echoed gently against the floor as I glided forward, the aroma of fragrance wafting gently through the atmosphere. I had changed my hair color that morning, a subtle shift, yet one that brought a fresh perspective to my contemplation. For the first time in years, I experienced a sense of liberation, and then it came back to me. The heaviness returned to my chest. Pushing against the newfound lightness, I had only just started to accept. I turned to him, pressing a kiss to his forehead, savoring the moment, enveloped in the warmth of his skin. He locked eyes with me, a smirk dancing on his lips, a playful lilt in his voice. I will be here for you until 9. Enjoy yourself. There was no ill will, no bitterness, simply grasping. Stepping out into the night, the cool air embraced my bare skin. A soft vow murmuring in the shadows. I understood that I would return by myself. It couldn't all happen at once, not at this moment. The night air enveloped me, a warm and electric embrace, as I ventured outside. My heels clicked softly against the pavement, each step deliberate and hesitant, and then I laid eyes on him. He leaned against his car, hands buried in his pockets, exuding an air of ease and relaxation. Yet, it was the way he gazed at me that caused a tightness to form deep in my stomach. Not as a doctor greeting a patient's wife, but as a man encountering a woman. He was not attired for a mere stroll. The fabric of his suit hugged his form perfectly, accentuating broad shoulders and a firm chest that tapered down to a lean strength. He was marked by a simplicity that was refreshing, devoid of any excess, embodying a quiet confidence that spoke volumes about his character, and then uncertainty. I had dressed with intention, yet the passage of time had etched its signs upon me. My form had changed from what it used to be. Software had been firm. A smooth line that replaced a former edge. A quiet murmur lingered, belated, weary, and naive. You look great, he said. His voice smooth and confident. The warmth in his eyes dispelled my hesitation. Thank you, Dr. Dawson, I whispered softly. He grinned. Kindly refer to me as Sean. I dedicate 8 hours each day to ensure that you savor every tale. Your support through a donation on PayPal would help me keep sharing those intriguing stories every day. Thank you. Dinner unfolded at a measured pace, each moment savored. A restaurant with soft lighting and pristine linens, the sort of venue where gazes lingered over candlelit tables, where dialogue flowed effortlessly between sips of wine, and his focus remained steadfast. He articulated his thoughts while I absorbed every word I spoke, and he leaned in as if I were sharing something of significance. His fingers brushed against mine as he reached for his glass, lingering just a second too long, a touch that should have meant nothing, yet sent a ripple through me, and then his hand over mine, warm, unwavering. What prompted you to ask me? A straightforward inquiry, yet it tightened something deep within me. I might have offered a courteous response, something gentle, something simple, yet the truth pushed against my chest, demanding attention, relentless. I paused, my fingers gripping the stem of my glass more tightly. I love Nick, I began, the words feeling both essential and insufficient, yet I was cautious, overly cautious, never glancing at anything beyond him. Then, I let out a long, trembling breath. I hadn't seen you before, but now I certainly do. A heavy pause filled with unexpressed thoughts. His gaze remained steady, devoid of judgment or hesitation, just a calm understanding that ignited a warmth within me. And then, before I could think, before doubt could creep in, he leaned forward. His lips brushed against mine, gentle yet purposeful. My breath caught, my fingers curling against the tablecloth. His touch was assured, unwavering, and devoid of any doubt. After years of feeling invisible, someone finally desired me, and I allowed myself to reciprocate those feelings. The cool night air enveloped me as I stepped outside, my breath uneven, my pulse still racing from the kiss. I intended to hold back, to maintain the space separating us, to remind myself of the vow I had taken. Yet, as his lips met mine, the past and future faded away, leaving just this moment, the gentle warmth, the lingering taste of wine shared between us. His hands discovered my face, thumbs gliding along the curve of my cheek, cradling me as if I were something invaluable. I've always been searching for someone like you, he whispered, his breath gentle against my lips. Loyal, kind, the words should have grounded me. Instead, they unraveled something profound within. Loyal. But was I? Nick had granted me permission, even encouraged it, and yet, as Nick sat across from Sean, Enveloped in the soft glow of candlelight and the intimacy of whispered confessions, he had never felt more distant. This was not meant for him. I wasn't considering his request, his desires, or the visions he had envisioned. This wasn't about keeping a commitment. This was simply me, a woman who had lost touch with the thrill of anticipation. The way a fleeting moment could ignite the skin. It was overwhelming. I pushed back from the table abruptly, the scrape of my chair slicing through the hum of conversation around us. The napkin fell from my lap, overlooked. My fingers trembled as I reached into my purse, fumbling for bills, placing them beside my plate. That brought a sense of closure, causing a knot to form in my stomach. Sean's eyes tracked my movements, his brow knitted in silent bewilderment. As I stepped out into the night, my breath was unsteady, and my steps quickened. I was uncertain about my destination. I simply had to get away, to break free from the heat of his touch, the burden of my own decisions weighing heavily on me. Yet he pursued. I sensed his footsteps trailing behind me, deliberate and unhurried, gradually bridging the distance that separated us. "Hold on," he said. His gentle fingers caught my wrist, creating a tether against the rush of my thoughts. "Engage with me." I shook my head. What can I express? Had I desired this too intensely? That the guilt was sinking its claws into me even as my body still ached for his touch? Did I really feel like I was betraying Nick, even with his blessing? I was at a loss for words, unable to articulate what I couldn't even grasp myself. Then another kiss, slower this time, calmer, less about urgency, more about reassurance. The aroma of sandalwood enveloped me, comforting, known, secure. My pulse steadied beneath the warmth of his lips, my breath slowing as my body melted against him. I pressed my forehead gently against his chest, eyes shut, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath, a soft, soothing rhythm enveloping me. And then, at last, I found my voice. I revealed it all to him, without asking or persuading. Simply unraveling the reality, allowing him to perceive it in its true form, and when I finished, he didn't hesitate. "I'll come," he stated plainly. I raised my eyes, scanning his expression for any hint of uncertainty, any sign of hesitation, yet there was nothing, only a serene comprehension. And there was something else. Something that caused my breath to catch once more. The house stood in silence as we approached, the atmosphere heavy with the anticipation of what was to unfold. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside, my heels clicking against the wooden floor. Every sound resonated in the stillness. From the bedroom, his voice called out, playfully teasing. I was just joking. You could have stayed longer. However, I chose not to respond. Instead, I faced the room, the very space where my existence had been restricted for countless years, and Sean trailed behind me. Upon our entrance, he lifted his gaze from the pillow. His expression transitioned from amusement to a more profound emotion, revealing surprise followed by understanding. He hadn't genuinely thought I would follow through with it, not this evening. I paused, everything within me urged to halt, to pause for a moment, to withdraw before it became too tardy. However, Sean showed no signs of hesitation. He advanced with ease, effortlessly, untroubled by the gazes that trailed behind him. I was not the same. The intensity of my husband's gaze pierced through me, rendering each breath shallow, and the fabric of my dress uncomfortably snug against my skin. "Give us a moment," he said, easing the tension, his voice steady. Sean took a moment, then nodded. Moving forward with unwavering confidence, the door clicked shut behind him, and the silence enveloped him. Overwhelming. Then gently, "Dear, unwind," his voice was soft, inviting. A hint of melancholy interlaced within the expressions. "I may never be able to provide you with what he can offer. I would appreciate it if you could take care of this for me." A gentle exhale escaped my lips, wavering and unsure. I faced him, looking for something in his expression, remorse, suffering, sorrow, yet there existed only warmth, a serene acceptance. He truly meant every word. Another moment slipped away, then the door swung open once more. Sean stepped back inside, his expression a mystery. Yet his eyes conveyed an emotion I couldn't quite identify. I approached the small switch by the door, flicking off the main light, leaving only the soft illumination of the wall sconce. The shadows elongated throughout the room, gently softening the surroundings, creating an atmosphere that felt more breathable. And then his hands did a gentle press on my back, soft and intentional. He slowly turned me to face away from him, careful and deliberate, as if allowing me the chance to stop him if I wished. I did not. Fingertips glided along my hairline, collecting the strands in his hands, elevating them. Remove it from my neck. A breath. Then, a gentle warmth, lips softly brushing against the tender skin just below my ear. His breath, causing a chill to run through me. Fingers descended, locating the zipper at the base of my spine, the gradual slide of fabric. Separation, uncovering, his hands glided beneath. Brushing against bare skin, the epiphany hit me. I wore nothing beneath this dress. No obstacles, nothing separating his touch from mine. A soft exhale escaped my lips as his fingers glided upward. A leisurely, unhurried journey of discovery. Everything about this felt perfectly paced, everything about this felt just right. For the first time in years, I just released my grip. The instant his hands glided over the exposed skin of my back, a profound release stirred within me. A gentle release of breath. A publication, the burden I had borne for years, of obligation, of remorse, of yearning while suppressing my desires, dissolved like frost beneath a gentle touch. The dress glided off my shoulders, the fabric softly brushing against my skin, as it cascaded to the ground. The soft glow illuminated the contours of my figure, gentle and exposed, save for the delicate lace that lingered between us. His hands discovered my hips, strong yet gentle, elevating me from the burden of hesitation and setting me down onto the chair, facing the bed, facing him. I glanced upward, my breath hitching as our eyes locked in the dim light. He observed, expressionless yet engaged. There was neither jealousy nor regret. There was a serene contentment. As though he had anticipated this moment, envisioned it in countless variations, and now it was revealing itself precisely as it ought to. A warmth blossomed within me, surprising and profound. I offered him a smile, a wordless gesture of comfort. Then Sean's fingers wrapped around the final piece of fabric separating us, pulling it down, stripping it away, until nothing remained to conceal. The initial contact caught me off guard. His lips brushed my foot, the warmth of his breath enveloping each toe as his mouth wandered, slow and reverent. A flick of his tongue, a kiss at the arch. The pressure of his lips against the delicate skin of my ankle, my fingers curled against the arms of the chair, my body responding in ways I hadn't anticipated. He descended, mapping a route with his lips, kisses landing on the tender skin of my calf, then my knee, and further down still. His hands pressed against my thighs, coaxing them apart, separating me like something delicate and revered, yet imbued with a yearning that left my breath coming in quick gasps. Then his fingers moved, a single stroke, slow and deliberate, testing the heat, the dampness already present, already anticipating. His lips moved with a playful curiosity, exploring, while the warmth of his tongue sent a thrilling jolt through every part of me. My head fell back. A sound slipped out before I could hold it back. He moved with a cadence, fingers dancing in sync with the flick of his tongue, soft at first, then delving deeper, probing. My body curved against the chair, my breath catching, my thighs quivering against his shoulders. I could hardly think, hardly grasp anything but sensation, but then his hands abandoned me. The unexpected void sent a shiver across my skin. My body pursued the sensation that had been lost. Then came the gentle whisper of fabric parting, a zipper gliding, a movement of change. His hands discovered my hips once more, drawing me nearer, leading me onward. His breath enveloped my ear with warmth as he descended, his body melding with mine, slow and steady. The heat of him reaching the deepest part of me. A sudden breath, a cry that escapes, unrestrained. And then those eyes, Nick's eyes, the same gaze that had once seared into me in the shadows. The way he used to look at me when his hands held my waist, when my breath caught against his skin, when my body surrendered beneath his, that gaze was fierce, yearning, devouring, something I had long since buried, something I believed I would never encounter again. It sent a shiver through me, not of shame, not of hesitation, but of something profoundly deeper. A request, a desire, an understanding. Sean pressed closer, his hands steady on my hips, leading me with a slow, intentional grace, while Nick observed from the sidelines. He was more than merely an observer. He was a piece of this, a piece of me, a piece of us. His chest rose and fell, breath quickening, lips parting slightly as if he could sense every touch, every slow movement of my body. For years, I had merely played the role of his caretaker. I had clothed him, cleansed him, nourished him. I had been loyal to him. Yet, I had never been his woman. This isn't the way. I in the quiet of the softly illuminated space, I sensed it, his assertion, his longing, his unspoken encouragement as his eyes traveled over me, absorbing each nuance, every response, every shiver that coursed through my skin. This was his desire. He desired me. For the first time in years, I experienced the feeling of being desired once more. Hands clasped my waist with a steady, resolute grip. My body was elevated with ease, pressed against the cool surface of the wall. The juxtaposition of his warm skin against the cold, painted surface sent a shiver through me, stirring something profound within. My back arched instinctively, the curve of my spine aligning with the solid heat behind me. His breath lingered at my neck, warm and uneven, his lips brushing against the delicate skin in that intimate space. A quick breath, a suppressed moan. The cadence started, profound and intentional, his hands steering my hips, pushing me closer to him. We were angled, positioned just so, not hidden, not concealed, everything open, everything meant to be seen, and I sensed it, his gaze observing, not remote, not indifferent. His gaze swept across me, taking in each movement, every sound that escaped my lips, and every tremor that ran through my body, fingers extended, clutching, separating, intensifying. My nails dragged along the wall, seeking to anchor myself amid the escalating intensity. The manner in which every motion propelled me deeper into an uncontrollable realm. The sounds escaping me were foreign and strange, soft sounds, breathy whispers, and desperate pleas echoed in the shadowy space. Nothing had ever happened like this before, not with him. Not with anyone. Had I overlooked this my entire existence, or had the passage of time silenced and reshaped my body's longings? The notion was ephemeral, swallowed by the cadence, the intensity. In the manner my body pleaded for more without uttering a sound, and he understood. Powerful hands shifted, directing me downward. I sank to my knees, the plushness of the rug hardly registering as fingers wove through my hair. A sudden tug, a measured strength, igniting warmth that surges through my bloodstream. A piercing sensation against my skin. The sting blossoming into delight, surprising yet desired. This was not done with care, this was not subtle. And yet, it was precisely what I required. A sound emerged from him, deep and primal. His breath quickening, his control slipping away. I sensed it, the constriction, the approaching brink. The way his body quivered with control, and then let go, warmth. All around. My skin, my lips, my chest, my stomach, the aroma of him. The burden of it, unmistakable, etching itself into me in ways I had never experienced before. My fingers danced across the surface, collecting, savoring. A leisurely look upward, my lips parting as I connected with his gaze. A grin, then I pivoted. Across the room, the shadows gently altered his expression. Yet, his eyes. Those eyes revealed it all to me, fulfillment, accepted. A longing that stirs the soul, the identical expression I had encountered numerous times prior. The identical gaze that had previously belonged solely to me. And now it belonged to me once more. The water was blistering, curling steam rising against the glass, enveloping me entirely. The heat scorched my skin. However, I chose not to modify it. I allowed it to take over my being, allow it to permeate my muscles, my bones, cleansing the remnants of what has just transpired. My body still vibrated with energy, yet my mind felt like a blank canvas, neither thoughts nor questions, only the rhythmic pounding of water against my skin. Time slipped away, perhaps more extended. Eventually, I stepped out, dragging a towel over my body, fingers slow and deliberate, as if I could wipe away the weight settling in my chest. My hair cascaded down my back. Still moist as I stepped barefoot into the bedroom. He stood in anticipation, his gaze rose to connect with mine, probing. I remained silent as I approached him, my hands moving instinctively, lifting, shifting, and transferring him into the chair with the same care I had provided every night for the past 6 years. Muscle memory, a routine so deeply ingrained that it could be executed effortlessly. Yet, this evening, I truly sensed it. The pressure of his form pressed against me. The warmth of his skin, where I made contact. The awareness that my hands had roamed in different realms just an hour prior. The bathtub brimmed with water, swirling gently as steam ascended into the air. I lowered him in gently. The heat enveloping him, softening his limbs, easing the stiffness that never truly departed from his body, and then his tone. I believe you are prepared to proceed. A straightforward statement, yet it stole the very breath from my lungs. I paused, my fingers quivering against his shoulders. Where to go? His stare remained steadfast. Darling, you've devoted far too much time to me. His voice was soft, steady. I understand the depth of your affection for me, and I feel the same way about you. However, I noticed you today feels incredibly relaxed, and I might just be in love. My heart tightened, the air in my chest heavy, stifling. No, I wasn't in love. That wasn't the intention behind this. You must move on from the life we shared, he pressed on. The words were delivered with such tenderness that they only caused deeper pain. There are delightful residences where I will be cared for. However, one must continue to exist. This is not an offer. I desire it for myself. A sudden intake of air, a piercing ache. His words cut deep, shaping something unrefined and excruciating. I cannot, I murmured, shaking my head. I am here, ready to assist you. Tears welled at the corners of my sight. He had done this intentionally. He desired for me to encounter another man, to experience something, to understand what I was lacking. I believed I had accomplished this for him, that I had consented to everything because it was his desire. However, that it was a falsehood. I had desired it as well, and now he was urging me to depart. To sign the documents, to solidify it, to turn my back. Silent tears streamed down my cheeks, relentless and unstoppable. Why had I done this? What had compelled me to agree? Why had I turned against him only to lose him entirely? The night unfolded, endless and uneasy, with sleep slipping away under the burden of my swirling thoughts. I convinced myself it was for Nick. That each and every moment, every touch, every softly spoken breath had been for him, yet the truth weighed heavily on my chest, undeniable and inescapable. I had desired it as well. Maybe at first I had persuaded myself differently, that I had accomplished. It stems from obligation, from affection, from selflessness, yet affection wore various masks. And I had begun to understand that some were gentler than the rest. Some smoldered, some insisted, some hovered like specters in the stillness of the night. As dawn crept through the windows, I stood before the mirror, smoothing my hands over the fabric of the dress that embraced me like a gentle whisper. It was rich in hue, smooth, and seamless, with no obstacles beneath it. Nothing separating my skin from the world. I recalled Sean's hands, how they had traced the contours of my body, and how willingly I had surrendered to him. I had allowed him. A decision. One I had crafted. Perhaps I was meant to begin anew. Perhaps I had devoted too much time lamenting a version of myself that was no longer there. Days drifted by, eluding my grasp like water flowing through my fingers. The attorney arrived. Documents were laid before me, the sheets substantial, conclusive. My name etched in ink. A seal affixed with a serene sense of conclusion. 2 decades vanished in a heartbeat, and then the hospice. The finest in the state, crisp air, expansive grounds. Serene elegance enveloped in immaculate precision. I reassured myself that it was for the best, that he would be taken care of, that I had made all the right choices. That I was acting in accordance with his wishes. The past month had been excruciating. I had believed the divorce would bring me relief, yet it instead gnawed at me, leaving me exposed and unanchored. Suffering possessed the ability to reshape individuals into something different. Sean had yet to come back. He had no justification to. Nick no longer required his assistance. The second date never arrived. I considered making the call, reaching out for something left undone. Yet the hesitation always hovered just beyond my fingertips. Maybe I wasn't prepared. Maybe I required solitude. Indeed, I was. The house lay in silence. An unsettling stillness where his presence had once resonated. Nick, Sean, the echoes of a life I had known stood empty and anticipating. I reclined in bed, gazing at the ceiling. Attuned to the rhythm of my own breath, slumber arrived gently, unfolding with a delicate and tender touch. Then, the doorbell rang. A piercing noise shattering the stillness. I sat up, my heart racing. The heaviness in my chest easing just a little. Sean. It was him. Now we can start anew. Enjoy this video and consider subscribing to Nasty Talks. Make sure to share this video with your friends on WhatsApp, so they can enjoy it as well. Thank you for your presence with me.